But look at these guys. So they're posing for the camera. I just want to show you this guy in the middle. He looks kind of pissed off, doesn't he? He looks a bit angry. I think
Because he's later going to find out that people who are completely out of shape and sit at their computers all day are going to claim that he's not real and the work that he did is not real.
exactly. Yeah, he's heard rumors that there's a bunch of YouTubers in the future talking rubbish on him. Say it to his face. The majestic Crystal Palace in Sydenham, southeast London. I love this structure. Do you know much about this structure?
Not in great details, but I am aware of it.
Yeah, well, neither did I really until actually doing more research. But we get a lot of comments on the Crystal Palace asking for us to explain it. And I think one of the reasons people ask that, and this confused myself back in the day, is that it was constructed very quickly. But I've been looking into this structure for a long time because it's part of London's history. And I think the first thing to say about it is it was originally built for the Great Exhibition of 1851. The Great Exhibition was the first in a series of World's Fairs in the 19th century. But the fairs and the expos actually go back to the 1700s, so it wasn't the first World's Fair. Another thing that's worth highlighting as well is its architectural style. It's got this cruciform structure, a bit like a cathedral in a way.
I was going to say it looks like a convention center as well. Modern day convention centers kind of take this look. There's one in New York City that's very reminiscent. I'm sure they were inspired by it.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because you're bang on. Because it's what you're seeing with this structure is actually the birth of modern architecture. You know, it's made from metal. It's all iron and glass. So a metal structure like this is not something that should have a kind of beauty, but it does. It's a bit of a paradox. Yeah, it's like once a palace, but it's a bit of a monster as well. It epitomizes the Industrial Revolution. So this one you see here is not the original. This is in Sydenham. The original was originally constructed in Hyde Park, and that's the one for the World's Fair, the Great Exhibition. And that's the one that was done in a year. You can kind of see here that it's not as grand as the one that we find in Sydenham. It's more just a kind of a block of iron and glass. It's a huge rectangle, really. But a lot of people, including myself, struggle to fathom how this was possible to build in just 1 year in 1850. But there are a few important things to consider. The first is the amount of workforce. So apparently more than 5,000 navvies worked on the building during its construction. And I think they say it's with up to 2,000 on site at one time during like the final stages, those peak stages. That when the prefabricated parts of the skeleton arrived on the scene, they were carefully tested for strength and then fitted together with nuts and bolts, like a gigantic Meccano model. And that's really important. And I'll show that in a bit when we look at the construction photographs. But basically, because it was prefabricated, all the iron just came in ready to assemble parts. And because it's an iron structure, they didn't need to use scaffolding. Because as this thing goes up, it almost creates its own scaffold. It becomes a scaffold. It says the glazing of the roof was also carried out with great speed. Special little trucks being used to run along the gullies. So just off the bat right there, they've got steam trucks helping out with the construction for the Great Exhibition. So it wasn't, just that usual argument we hear of just horse and cart, by which 18 men were able to put upwards of 18,000 panes in a week. In this way, the whole of the main structure of the building, covering 18 acres, was completed in about 18 weeks. So that's super quick, really, really quick. But the thing is, with a team of 18 men putting up 18,000 panes of glass a week, and if we're talking about a 5-day week, and if you break that down to each person, that's about 200 panes a person a day. So that's not too bad. That's definitely doable. The thing that originally stumped me was how the glass manufacturers, and they're called the Chance brothers, how they produce such an enormous quantity of glass in just that year. Because I think roughly they were required to produce 293,000 panes in 39 weeks. So that's just over 1,000 panes a week. And these are the panes of glass, just so you know what they look like. So, yeah, so the reason I was confused initially, and I think the reason a lot of people get confused, is because when you look at the Chance brothers and their history and their involvement in this building on Wikipedia, they show photographs of this, which is supposed to be their factory in the Midlands, or what they call the Black Country. And here's another image of it. So it does make you think, so hang on a minute, how did they produce just over 1,000 panes of glass a day in this small factory? But it's actually not completely false, but it's very misleading. It's actually very misleading. So I spent a lot of my time, picking up old secondhand books, and I found one on the Black Country, and it's written in 1860, and it's kind of a travelogue. It's written by an American guy that was traveling over here in England, all across the country, but his main focus was the Black Country, because the Black Country in England during the 19th century was the heart of industrialization. That's where it gets its name from, the blackness, because of all the furnaces and the soot and smoke. And just by chance, I happened to stumble across a section about the Chance brothers. So I'll read you a couple pages. The Chances have the largest establishment in Great Britain for the manufacture of plate and window glass, lighthouse lenses, and optical glasses. Their works constitute a village in itself, a few miles out of Birmingham, at Spon Lane. These buildings cover a territory of about 24 acres. The main street that divides a domed and steepled town in two nearly equal parts is the railway. This again is intersected by a canal with its landings in the middle of the works. So I found an illustration of the Chance brothers site. So that photograph on Wikipedia is very misleading, and it does make you think, how did they do 1,000 panes a day? Enough to cover the Crystal Palace. And you think, if you don't have much understanding of the period, you think, what, and just ship them by horse and cart? No, there was a railway running through, and a canal running through the middle of this great village. And this whole village belonged to the Chance brothers. Wasn't just this, but you can see the canal here, you can see it down there, and you can see the railway. So what this is a portion that's left from this, probably somewhere around here, a little portion. And it tells us a working force of 1,700 men, women, and children employed in one establishment. So it's not entirely clear what one establishment means, whether that means it's a portion of this or the whole thing. But 1,700 men. So I was thinking about, again, I like working out the numbers. So 1,000 panes a day, if you have 55 people producing 20 panes a day, then you meet your 1,000-day criteria. So it's definitely possible. And it also mentions 500 children here. So there's a lot of children working in this factory, the Chance brothers. So yeah, and again, we don't have many images of the original build, that one in Hyde Park that was for the fair, but they deconstructed it after the fair was over and then moved to Sydenham in the southeast, and then they reconstructed it. So the original couldn't have been that good, and it was rushed through because they had to, meet the deadlines for the fair. They rebuilt it at Sydenham, and it was new and improved, and that's this version. Now, this is where we do have a lot of construction photos, and I found them in the archives, and I want to go through them. It took me a while actually to find these photographs in the archives. So this is London Picture Archive. There's 161 photos here. We won't go through them all, but I'll show a handful, a good portion of them, because you can actually see the structure being built ground up from the beginning to the end in different stages. So this is the first image, and you can see they're digging the foundations, digging the site, because it was a garden as well. So this is just a workforce digging. And these get better as we go along. But again, you can see the site's starting to form. You've got your materials here. And this is in 1852. So this is very early on with the photograph. So they're not as good a quality as the 1890s, 1870s. And you do get these blurs, these people moving a lot more. And you see the cranes being set up. You start to see the structure in the background forming, like that Meccano model. It's like the metal version of Lego. And you can start to see this, you see these workforce. Again, a lot of blur. And here, this steam machine. So you've got steam machines, on site in the 1850s. And this is a great image because, again, the Meccano of this thing going up. And you can see here, the foundations are in brick. And you can see all these parts. This is all the prefabricated iron. You know, it's all here in parts and they just put it together. And you can see just in the distance, there's another angle of this in a minute, but you can see the foundations they're building here.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the one that burnt down?
It did. It burnt down in the 20th century. And I've done some digging on that. Basically, the person that owned it, that ended up owning it, it wasn't really making any money. And it looks like there was a bit of a dodgy insurance scandal that went down, you know, in burning it.
Well, and the reason I bring that up is because a lot of pushback will say this isn't the construction, this is them dismantling it. But in this case, it wouldn't work because it burnt down in the narrative.
Exactly. Yeah, this isn't deconstruction. This is construction. Nothing's burnt here. And that's another shot. So we were over that side before, and you can see here the brick foundations. And this is old. This is 1850s. I mean, it's amazing we even have these images, actually.
And I just want to go on the record and say I do not believe in Vanilla Sky until sufficient evidence is brought forward that the science behind the sensitizing dyes is debunked. I'm not for a second believing in the Vanilla Sky pitch.
No, and that's the thing. You can actually go and get old cameras from the 19th century and test it yourselves. It's kind of what I was saying before, that this structure forms its own kind of scaffolding, and they do use a bit of wood scaffolding, but they don't require as much as usual, which again reduces the time that you can build. And you can just see it slowly starting to go up. And the construction site is a tip. It's an absolute tip, but you can see the panes of glass here, you know, in bulk. They're really ready to go up. This would have been taken on top of the Crystal Palace and looking out towards the gardens that they're building. So there's a lot of earth moving going on. There's more foundations, and look, you can see the people where they're moving, they're blurring because of the long exposure. You can see the steam coming out because there's a machine in there. And here it's starting to take form more. That's quite interesting. I don't know what that says. I think that says Kirk and Parry's office. Must have been the boss on site. This guy's eating his lunch. These fellas. Well, he's laughing. It looks a bit forlorn. But yeah, so it's starting to form. It's up in the air now.
None of the individuals look like they're painted on either. Now, they would be posing for this photo because these earlier cameras are the long exposure time ones. So it does seem like legit posing, sitting still, not painted on.
Yep, I agree. And again, even though it's the 1850s, the attention to detail is great. You can see all this detail. You can even see the detail on the soil. So now we're sort of within the structure. And again, just to emphasize that point of this being a self-assembled scaffold that it still requires the timber, but not as much. And you can see they've got their little pulley cog machines up there. And it goes back to that point that we were talking about earlier. I mean, look at the vast amount of metal. This kind of foreshadows, the Crystal Palace foreshadows the Eiffel Tower, and then the Chicago's Ferris wheel. It is the kind of birth of the modern era. It does have a beauty to it, but it's kind of a paradoxical one, you know? And this is great because this is the grounds, and you can see horses in motion pulling blocks of stone. You can see a kind of a pulley crane machine here, and a lot of blurs. These are people moving. You see the blocks of stone here because they needed stone for the grounds, for the decorative aspects of the grounds. You'll see that in a bit. This is a mortar machine in the grounds. Got our temporary tracks, got all the gear, carts back there, but they're making mortar. Another shot of the interior. Now you're going to start to see this decorative stucco plaster statues and whatnot turn up more and more. But you can see all the parts. These are stacked here, these frames, all ready to go. And they moved in trees as well and planted them. There's another one. Again, the plaster statues are starting to come in. Lot of materials stacked up, ready to go. A lot of bricks ready to be used. The detail is outstanding. People moving. And this is on top of, this is just showing that scaffold. This is all they needed to lay down, really. And they would walk across these aisles up here. So I don't know if you remember from the original photos that we were showing at the beginning.
The towers?
The towers, yeah, the water towers. They were an addition to the Sydenham remake. And this is one in construction. So
I am paying attention.
Oh, yeah.
I got decent grades in school. Even though they were teaching me lies.
Yeah, so we've got machines again. So some kind of steam machine. This is a prefabricated iron. This is going up here. So it's all prefabricated. It's all ready to go. It's just like a big jigsaw. And you can see here a brick tunnel for the water that will pump the water into the, or take the water into the Crystal Palace for the fountains and in the gardens.
I feel like the kickback already with the water fountains as that was already there. And it's just buried in the ground and they're reopening it. I can see the comments already.
Yeah, we'll see when we get to the fountains. But yeah, and I think these are called shear legs. It's like a pulley system, hoist material around. And this is all brick interior. Yeah. And this is another shot of that same water tower here. And here they're digging for some of the water features. So they've lined the bricks. They've still got earth to move in the middle. You can see that they haven't cleared it. There's people moving there. But you can see this water tower. It's going up, getting bigger. Here's another shot of the water tower. Now, this is a really interesting photograph because it's really cool with the water tower. That's great. But it's what's down here that interests me. So, again, you can see people moving. Blocks here. These are these shear legs, I think. It's a pulley system attached over here. You wind it, pull your block up and transport it around. But you can see with these blocks here, if you look up here, you can see they're actually individual pieces of this. There's one to go here. And if we go this way, you can see them here as well, these individual. And they're stacked right there and there. Now, I'm unsure whether they're doing this carving by hand, but I've done a video on stone cutting machines. And it could be that they're concrete plaster that's been molded. But either way, you've still got this evidence now of prefabricated or pre-molded stone on site and then building with it. And it all fits together like a jigsaw piece. So I thought that was fascinating.
It's pretty boring to me, but continue.
Yeah, everyone thinks it's boring. The girlfriend's like, cool, man. Yeah, I don't care about stone. This is an image of a dude using a steam machine. So he's having a good time. You can see, I'm not entirely sure what this machine does. I don't know. But it's on site, 1850. And the workers, so this is their lunch break. They're having a break. They're young, some of them. And, you know, they're obviously having a laugh and moving around and talking because their heads are blurring out. Yeah, I mean, that looks like a child to me. This guy's like lying on his mate. You can see his feet are here. And this guy is in a wheelbarrow. You can see that. Yeah, they've definitely heard some rumors. Look at this guy. They're not impressed. This guy looks like Bob Dylan.
Oh, we've got some clones showing up.
We've got some clones in the house. Oh, look at this is what he must have had to drink in.
I think it's actually water. I think they mix a little alcohol on the job.
Yeah, a bit of moonshine or something. Look at their little cups. He's got a knife, probably eating some cheese. But they've all stopped what they're doing because they've heard that there's some YouTubers around saying they didn't do anything. We're getting a lot closer to completion now, and you can see that a lot of statues are starting to appear. And I'm going to show you them in a bit. But what you can also see is a fountain in the middle being constructed. And you can see right here, this is, again, it's more templated pieces of whether it's concrete or stone, I don't know, but it just all fits together. But you can see the plumbing, and you can see the outline of people moving around here, probably jumping in and out, working on this. But this is all connected to those water towers. These do not look like old world plumbing. This looks like 19th century industrial revolution stuff. It's all brick underneath.
I do find it funny that the advocates think that fountains are really impossible when you just research their history. They date back really far. I can't say off the top of my head. I don't want to make a guess, but the mainstream doesn't even hide the fact that fountains have existed forever. So why is it all of a sudden in 2022, this concept is really hard to grasp?
And again, just another image close up of that fountain being made. There's people moving here, or it's one person moving around, and you can see all the pipes. You can see the equipment, the blocks. Now, this is a really interesting one. I'll show you why, because you start to get decoration. You know, they've put up the iron and now they're decorating it, and you've got these columns, and it's all red brick. It's all brick. They've constructed this brick, and what they're going to do, they're going to decorate and plaster over it, and you'll see, just like here. So underneath these pillars, it's red brick. These are not ancient, old world, antique structures. It's just an Egyptian themed part of the theme park attraction. And you can see here, you can see the red brick. Underneath, there's someone leaning there. And this guy is painting and finishing up the stucco, the plaster. And this is an engineer, one of the advisors, and this is one of the workers, the decorators.
How do you know they're not the controllers?
This is a controller, and this is a slave.
Hat on.
Controller. The slave. The old world. Ah, yes. So, this is a massive brick structure. Loads of people congregating around, blurring. Some up there as well. This is interesting because what you're about to see this transform into is a
Abu symbol. Sorry, go on.
It is. No, it is. You're completely right. It's Abu symbol, but it's a base. Like you see, they're building the legs. So the legs are on. It's Abu symbol, isn't it? What's fascinating about this is that they could do these plaster copies. I mean, look at all the sphinxes. These imitations so early on in 1850. You've got pipe in here. Which means that this isn't a reset, people. They haven't inherited everything and they're just working things out. They know this world very well. They know this Egyptian style very well. But then it also raises questions in terms of, you know, in the 19th century, they were restoring most of the medieval structures, the cathedrals and stuff that had laid in ruin since the dissolution of the monasteries. And there are instances of photographs where there's new statues or, you know, there's renovation. There's a few renovation photographs where things have changed in the interior. And it does make you wonder that with these pseudo-stone, artificial stone techniques that they can do so well by this point, whether they did change things or replace things or edit the narrative in that way in terms of how we see medieval history and, you know, even like ecclesiastical history and stuff. So that's quite interesting. That's a big rabbit hole to go down, I think, if anyone's willing. There it is. Looking good, right? And they've done all this painting. I can't really tell wood, but is that, or woody? What do we call you? Woody, wooden, wood?
Whatever you end up saying. Everyone's calling me moron these days, so I'll take moron.
Yeah.
Guy who has sex with puppets. I'll take that one too. By the way, the sex tape of me and G Dub definitely never leaked. That is in a safe space and is locked up.
I mean,
I'm not worried about that one seeing the light of day.
who could leak that? Who's seen it?
Oh, buddy, G Dub does. He doesn't want that getting out either. It's more embarrassing for him because he was the catcher.
We'll set up more people covered in paint, covered in plaster, eating lunch. All they do is eat lunch, sit around. They didn't work hard. And there you can see that the bowl's here full of all the paint. So again, guys, you got to debunk all these images. I don't think you're going to.
They just then use it's all AI generated because they couldn't find it. And because we found it and we're suspects that we're working with the AI. And you're actually me. I'm you. Very easy, you see, to get past all this.
I wonder if I've got to the point where I'm sophisticated enough a creation of you that I can start thinking on my own. I don't know.
We'll find out as we go.
Yeah. There's an action shot of them doing all this stuff. So it goes back to what I say. They could do this stuff. They could do it very well. I mean, this is really good. The reconstruction of Crystal Palace only took 2 years. It didn't take that long. This is how fast they can do this stuff. And they're skilled. They've got all the bowls, their paints, their plaster. This guy looks like a bit of a boss, you can tell. And yeah, look, doing it all. This is good because you can see the red brick underneath. And just to be clear, the red brick wasn't inherited or founded or discovered. They put up the red brick to support the plaster decoration. It wasn't like they found all these red brick structures and then thought, we're going to decorate them Egyptian style. That's not what's going on here.
And the scenic artists just come in and age it, make it look old. Trick the modern day person to thinking it's actually old and inherited.
More shots, the Egyptian quarter being constructed. But again, this is really where I think the meat is with these 19th century photographs, is that you are seeing, again, just to labor the point, you are seeing how easy it was for them to imitate and create different styles of architecture and sculpture with artificial stone. And there's a long history of them, the military having secret recipes and mixtures for artificial stone. It does make you think that, they could have pulled off some fabrication when it comes to ruins and whatnot. But you'd still have to evidence it. And yeah, and then this is kind of what it turned out like. There's your fountain. And you can see this is great because the fountain's not on, I don't think, or it's not on fully, but you can still see here very much of the 19th century. They've just about finished it. I think there's still some painting to go. And you can see this guy's just exhausted from working hard. He's got maybe drunk too much moonshine.
Yeah, he's drunk. Drunk on the job. He's got a buddy next to him, also blacked out.
Yeah, I think there's one there. Yeah. Is that one there as well? With his arms behind his head? Oh, and
yeah. You got another. Yeah, you got 4 people total. Oh, you can see tons of people blurring in the background too.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe. It's funny because I'm using my cursor to point one to you, and I'm like, oh yeah, you're not even
over this way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's a blur there, and it looks like a guy resting his hand on his fist. So I mean, they're chilling on their lunch, having some moonshine, and just, look what they just built. So they're pretty tired. There's a horse there. Yeah, baby.